Hi, my name is Ronnie Gilbert, and I decided to do my project on exploring the topics of self-esteem and self-efficiency and the way they pertain to adolescence and growth, and also the issues of bullyism and how it can affect these things. Immediately, this topic stood out to me. It was one that really hit close to home. I actually have experienced some of these issues myself in middle school and a little bit of high school, and it was hard. It was really hard. I felt like I didn't have anybody to talk to, and if I did talk to somebody, it would just make it worse, and I would hate for somebody else to be in that situation. So I think my goal for this whole thing was just to get educated on the ways that people are trying to help with these kind of situations, because it's something that happens really frequently, but people are afraid to talk about because they don't know how it'll affect them. Being in that situation, I totally understand where they're coming from, because I was totally that kid that was like, no, it's fine, I'll just keep it to myself, deal with it on my own because I don't want to tell anybody about it, it'll make it worse. But it did. It started to affect me a lot, and it started to affect not just me, but my family, the way I reacted towards certain situations, the way that I treated people, and it just made me be somebody who I didn't want to be, and I never want somebody to feel trapped in that same situation. So in this research, I have found that 1 in 5 students in the United States has reported being a victim of bullying during the school year of 2013. I just think that's so sad that 1 in 5 students, because that's so many students on a broad spectrum that have said that they have been bullied in some way. Do I think that the word bully can be used too often? 100%. I definitely think that it's a word that gets thrown around. I don't think that it's used in necessarily the right sense. I do think that there's a difference between just a kid being mean and a kid actually bullying somebody. Both of them are not right, and both of them should not happen, but I do think that the word bully can be used way too much. But it's still sad. I think learning that bullying can have results in anxiety, lower academic achievement skills, and reduce the want to go to college is just really sad, because it just shows you on such a broad spectrum how it can affect somebody's life and their self-esteem and the way that they continue going about their everyday. There's so many kids that get away with bullying people because they never understand. And I think it's honestly harming on both ends. It's harming the person who's getting bullied 100%. But I think too, the bully themselves, they're not learning their lesson. They're not learning that you can't get away with doing those kinds of things in the real world. So it's just really hard. It's hard on both parties for sure. But obviously, being the bully is not okay. And I think if kids get away with it for so long, they don't have to face the consequences, which isn't fair at all. I think it's crazy that kids think that they can just hurt other people's feelings for their own benefit, or for the fact to make them more popular in the sake of somebody else, because it's not okay and it shouldn't be happening. I found out a lot of things about self-esteem and how bullying can hurt your self-esteem. And I've kind of known some of these things because of my experiences, but reading them on a deeper level was crazy. If bullying continues to go on, it can affect the way that the victims feel and express their emotions. They can feel angry, bitter, vulnerable, helpless, frustrated, lonely, and isolated. And that is 100% true. You don't understand how much of an impact your words and what you do has on somebody's life. So I just think that everyone being aware of it is super important. Honestly, doing research and finding that all the programs that are being used in schools, all that kind of stuff, are pretty much the same that they've been forever. And not to say that they're not working, but I think something that would help so much is to just make kids aware of the effects that it has long term. Not necessarily in the sense that you're going to get through to everybody, because you won't, But for instance, I went to high school with a kid who seemed really popular. He was super nice, super friendly to everybody, always had a really outgoing personality, but he had a group of kids that were doing some really rude things to him. He ended up taking his life senior year of high school. And I think the way that it affected his family and his friends and everybody that did love him so much was almost harder than the fact that like he had been being bullied forever. Don't get me wrong, it's not okay, and the fact that he did decide to take his own life broke my heart. But when I went, I remember so vividly going to his funeral, and his family was devastated. And they weren't blaming anybody or anything like that because that wasn't the time or the place. But I think the fact of seeing how it didn't just affect this one kid. It didn't just make it so this kid had a hard time in school. It didn't just make it so nobody liked this kid. It affected his entire family. They lost a son, a brother, a cousin, a friend. And to see the way that it just ripple affected so many people in his life really brought it into perspective for me that it's not okay for anybody to do that. It's not okay for the fact that it affects people for the rest of their life. If you get told when you're young that you're ugly or fat, you constantly have those things in the back of your head, no matter how old you get, no matter how much you mature or grow up. And so I think just making kids aware of the effects that it can truly have and the extent of the effects that it can have is so important. I remember going to school and we'd have assemblies about bullying all the time, and it would always be like, it's not okay, this is the things it can do. And it like hit close to home, and it still like was something that stood out to me. But the day that we had an assembly about bullying once, after this sweet kid had taken his own life, and his mom came in and had spoken at the assembly and just said, I wish so bad that he would have told me what was going on so that I could have helped him put a stop to it. And I remember certain kids walking out of the assembly, and it was hard. It was hard to see, and it was hard to experience, and you knew that these kids were kids who had been affecting his life. And to see them, they were walking out in tears, walking out crying, feeling bad about what they had done. And I think doing it on a true level of seeing his mom so upset and so heartbroken that this had happened really hit everybody close to home. And even though it was so sad and so heartbreaking, it was helpful. And I think that it's important. I think it's important that people know. So yeah, that's just the biggest thing that I learned in this project, is making people more aware of it and the effects it has not only on that person, but their whole family and all the people that love them. There was so many people that loved this kid that weren't even related to him, just knew him from him being so kind to other people, and he was a really kind kid, and it breaks my heart. And it breaks my heart that people have to go through this all the time and the effects that it can have on them, because those things stay with you forever. So it can affect your job, it can affect your family life, it can affect the way you treat certain people, your wife, your kids, just like so many things that it can do. And it's not okay. And I think it's just really important that that's brought to attention. So yeah, that's why I chose this topic. And as you can tell, I'm super passionate about it. And I loved being able to do research and find out facts and statistics of things that happen. And even though it was really hard, it was really good to know. And I think it's important that everybody knows it. So yeah, that's all.